I think, once the cane harvesting commenced, we have already had, within a span of, I would say, 6 weeks, we have had at least half a dozen fires. And people in the Western Division, anywhere between Lautoka to Rakiraki, has been inconvenienced as a result of an unplanned power outage caused as a result of a wooden power pole carrying our 33,000 volt tower lines catching fire. And as I said earlier, how did it catch fire? Because someone, without caring too much and very carelessly, piled the rubbish and lit the fire very close to our wooden power poles, and the power poles go. In fact, I was in the West last week, and as I was driving along the road, there were so many fires already lit during the daytime, and I could see they were very close to our assets, to the EFL power poles. But people are not, in very plain language, they care two hoots, what happens to our power poles. And it inconveniences so many customers. They go without power supply because in order to replace that power pole, we spend about $40,000-$50,000, getting crews, putting the power is already off, but getting all the equipment and material and all that. And by the time we erect, it takes about 8 to 10 hours. Yesterday, the power basically halfway between Tavua and Rakiraki, and all the Tavua town and all of Rakiraki and in between Tavua and Rakiraki, the power went off at around 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And we were only able to restore the power 4:30 a.m. this morning. So you can imagine the time it takes to gather man, equipment, and resources, and then get to the site and then put the power pole and all that. It takes a lot of time because it's a Saturday. Okay, people may not be available and all that, and we need to get the crews and all. But why did all this happen? Because someone doesn't care about EFL assets and just lights the fire. And obviously, when EFL goes out there and questions people, oh, I didn't light the fire. But it's very close to your house. I didn't light the fire. Then who lit the fire? Look, we are not here to blame people, but we are just requesting all our citizens, to be more cautious because it's causing a lot of inconvenience to EFL and to our valuable customers. So we want people to be more cautious when they're trying to get rid of their debris or after the cane has been harvested and they want to burn the rubbish. Be very careful. You can pile far away from our power poles and do whatever that needs to be done so that our electricity customers are not inconvenienced in any way. Thank you. That's my message. I mean, it depends on the extent of damage. Sometimes what happens is, if the power pole is in the hills, and someone lights up fire in the hills too, then in order to get to the hill, there may not be any access road available at that point in time. Then the exercise becomes even more laborious. Then we have to look for a bulldozer on a Saturday or a Sunday or at night. We get a bulldozer, we have to make the access road, because the access road has to be made, because when we get a new power pole, we have to get a crane truck in there. So it can get very laborious. So the expense can range anywhere between $30,000-$40,000 to $100,000 just to replace one power pole, because we may have to cut access roads in order to access that site. This season, yeah, I would say at least 6 to 10 cases we have already experienced of our wooden power poles that transports our 33,000 volt line, which runs all the way from Lautoka to Ba to Tavua to Rakiraki, that has been damaged almost more than a half a dozen times, and our crews had to go out at odd times in the evening or night to replace them, and it had caused a lot of inconvenience to our valuable customers. Well, each case can be anything between 30,000-40,000 to 100,000. So you can imagine if you have half a dozen cases, you could have easily spent $200,000 or $300,000 or more. But more important than the cost is the inconvenience to our valuable customers. Businesses where, imagine, it was a Saturday and 1 p.m. in Tavua, the town is running full swing, with people coming to shop and all that, and the power goes off. We have always done that. But when we go to the nearest house near the power pole that caught fire, they will say, I didn't light the fire. That's a challenge for us. How do you prove that? It's so difficult, you can imagine, Well, what we have done is we have recruited lots of new apprentice level people, but obviously they're raw. To bring them up to the par, of a certified lineman or line mechanic, as we call it, it's going to take 3 to 4 years. So basically, we have replaced them with apprentices, But to train them and bring them to that level of performance is going to take us 3, 4 years. And therefore, obviously, our service levels do get affected because, we have lost around 300 people in the last 2 or 3 years. Of course, or not all of them have migrated, but the majority of them have migrated. The few others, not the technical people, the technical people have definitely migrated. But the administrative and other staff, they could go to other organizations because this problem is not only being faced by EFL, it's being faced by many organizations in Fiji. So when they have vacancies, I could have my administrative or finance staff, they get a better position out there, then they go across. So it's a problem for Fiji which we need to resolve. Look, this is not something new. It's been happening for years, and obviously, supposedly, there's a house out there and the fire, and the next house is half a kilometer away. Who do you think is responsible for the fire? But obviously, when you go there, we don't have any proof to say they lit the fire. And it becomes too laborious for us to pursue. All we can do is humbly appeal to such people or such farmers, that please, when you light fires, and I must say this, as I said earlier, I traveled to the west last week, and as we were driving all the way, from Suva to Lotoka, there's so many fires lit, especially in the Western Division. And people seem to be, just lighting fires to get rid of their debris without paying attention to any assets, like infrastructure assets belonging to EFL or even telecom that are in the vicinity that could get damaged and cause supply interruptions. How can it be tackled? Well, I think, generally, I think we need to give a message out to the people, and that's the reason we have you here today. And we are taking the responsibility on our shoulders because our assets are getting affected, and therefore, we humbly appeal to the people at large, especially in the Western Division. This mainly happens, in the Cane Belt area, okay? And that's all the way, between Nindi, let's say halfway, Singatoka even, all the way to between Singatoka to Rakiraki. That's the area that is largely affected during the cane harvesting session. And we have been facing this problem all the time. In fact, what we have done is, and actually this year we commenced this program, is we have got what we call an anti-fire retardant paint, and we have started to paint our power poles. Again, that's an expense. And that expense we have to incur now just because people are not considerate when they are lighting fires. So now we are trying to we have imported a special type of paint and a wrap that we are putting around our wooden poles so that if there is a fire in the vicinity, the power pole doesn't catch fire. But obviously we've got, hundreds and thousands of power poles, and we have started that exercise. So it's going to take some time before we complete the exercise.